Inspiration podcast, where we interview women of inspiration who are making an impact locally, nationally, and globally. These are fearless leaders that are boldly making their leading their passion, and they're inspiring others to step in and dream big. So today, it's my pleasure to be introducing our 2020 Woman of Inspiration Health and Wellness Award recipient, Connie Jakab. Welcome, Connie. So great to have you. I know that for the listeners on our podcast today, I'm going to just take a little bit of a moment here and introduce you. So I'm going to read from my sheet so I don't miss a nugget. And then we're going to dive in and have the absolute best interview today. And so I'm looking forward to it. Connie Jakab is the owner of the Brave Parent Institute and the senior manager of Wellness Innovative, two companies that are about changing home and work environments for mental health. She is also the author of Bring Them Closer and two other books. Connie is passionate about rebelling against status quo living and encouraging others to branch out. Connie is also the director of the National Hope Talks, and we're going to talk about that, Connie, and the Hope Movement Battling Mental Health in Canada. Now, timely, Connie, this is top of mind. COVID has taken that from whatever spot it was and put it right at number one spot. So great work. You are a sought after speaker, and your raw honesty and humor is really inspiring. Connie drives her passion outwards in terms of the arms who wanting something more than a radical and meaning life. You embrace people fully, Connie. She lives with her husband and her two boys in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And I know because I have been there handing out the presents. I know where you live, Connie. And we've had a lot of fun over the past couple months. Of course, welcome to the Woman of Inspiration podcast.
I am thrilled to be here.
Awesome. So, Connie, I have to say, this is the Woman of Inspiration podcast. I know I am asked all the time, about the women, about the stories. And you know what? I think what's really interesting is we all are about the stories. I don't think I've met one woman, and I can tell you that your story is very deep and it's meaningful. The work that you're doing is really born from your story. So let's jump in. I'd love you to share a little bit about what chose you down this path to do the work that you do, Connie.
Absolutely. Well, so it's interesting. I started working in youth resilience, if you can believe this, in East Vancouver with gang members and drug dealers, teaching them hip hop dance, and really noticed a huge influx of mental health issues even 20 years ago. It looked different, but it was on the rise. And we would call those families. And then, throughout my work in resilience and mental health, then a crisis hit our own home. And it became real because we are a quote unquote normal family. If I can use that word, I mean, my husband and I, we've been married 21 years. We have jobs, we're educated. And a lot of times people think that would never happen to me because, and we fill in the blank. But it happened to us. Our son diagnosed with anxiety, depression at age 6, suicidal at age 8, hospitalized. It was a crisis. And even with all my training, even with all my book knowledge, I didn't know what to do. And so our journey of helping families, helping workplaces have come from, if we really want to make a shift in culture and shift the story for our young people, then we need to start at home with the parents. And that means that we also have to tackle and take on the workplace because that's where parents are most of their day. And so it's been a real journey. It's all about shifting culture from the parents and the workplace and trickling down into our kids.
Now, I know that, the title of a Woman of Inspiration comes with a very big responsibility, and so really it's about sharing your story and being okay in that environment. And through, you have just pictured it really well, is that when you're doing what you're doing because you were the typical family, and it's because now you're able to voice your realness in your family and the struggles that you face. And actually, I heard you talk about this. You're like, I'm an expert in the industry and I am struggling here. So what about all you folks out there? So, Connie, let's talk about that. Like when we talk about a woman of inspiration, it's owning it. It's being real and it's being authentic and it's leading and striving and continuously going down that journey to make change. So let's talk about some of those struggles that you've had to overcome and some and turning points. I'd like to know about those turning points that said, you know what? I can't be silent anymore. I've got to do something about this.
Well, seeing the mental health issues that our kids are facing as it's been growing over the last 20 years, this is not just something that just happened. This has been growing. And we've just been sitting back and like frogs in water that's getting warmer and warmer. We've just been putting up with it, if I can use that word, and not really noticing it. And now it's critical. Second leading cause of death among our young people is suicide, and it's growing in adults. And it's not okay. We need to declare war on suicide. We need to stand up as parents and say, I'm putting my stakes in the ground and not in my house. And I work with families and I hear parents say, I guess this is just the way it is. I guess my child is just anxious. I guess they're just depressed. But can I just say that my son is now 14 and he has 14-year-old struggles, which is real. Their brains are completely under construction and they do experience influxes of anxiety and depression. And then you add a pandemic on top of that. And of course, they're not doing well. But compared to where he was when he was 8 is night and day. We are not in that place anymore because of the steps that we took to bring him closer and allow him to have feelings and to face this head on instead of ignoring it.
So let's talk about those steps. Like, and I know people that are listening right now on the podcast are watching right now. If you don't experience something, guaranteed somebody that you know within an arm's reach is experiencing. So if you can share with us, what are some of those steps that people can take?
Well, I know for myself, the pivotal moment, the moment that really changed the game for us when my son was in the hospital, age 8, and depression for him showed up as anger and rage. And I didn't realize that. I just thought he was rebellious. I thought he had behavioral problems. And I remember the psychologist bringing me aside and said, "What do you do when your son throws fits of rage?" And I said, "Well, I send him to his room. I tell him you can't come out until you're going to be a good boy." I mean, I'm a child of the 80s. That's how we were raised. And so she said to me, "Oh no, you never send the hurting away from you. You bring them closer." And I remember that really impacted me. And 3 weeks later, he shows up at home with meds and a counselor. And I'm thinking, this is the answer. And then that first fit of rage hit again. And all I could think of was, what does bring him closer look like right now? And so I removed all the sharp objects. I tried to hold him. You don't hold a dysregulated child, it doesn't work. But I would sit there with him in his mess and not allow it to bring up my own anxiety, bring up my own fears. I would sit there and allow us to just experience it together, welcoming it instead of trying to fix it. And I think that's the thing that really changed the game in our home was I wasn't trying to change his behavior. I wasn't trying to fix it then. I was just trying to be with, bringing him closer, allowing my support to bring healing to his mind and to his heart. And it took a year. I'm not going to lie. That I had to show up like that for a year. And in that year, as I was showing up for him, I had to face myself. I did have anxiety of my own come up. I did have my own traumas come up. And I had to bravely face my own junk. And as I allowed myself to be healed, then healing was able to happen for him. And we continue. That is still our game plan in our house. Every emotion is welcome here.
Mm. You know, I find it really interesting that, you know, you were there for him and you're like, it took a year. It's not an easy fix, but I would love to know, you know, the conversation that you had with your son. Did he know? How did you approach that with him so that he didn't feel like he was, you know, doing something wrong? Or how did you make him feel so safe in that conversation so that he understood himself what was going on and that he could maybe, that there's help for him?
Yeah, and that's a great point because these kids, especially if they're kids and even teens, they don't understand what's going on. And behavior is communication. So he was raging out of the frustration of having all these emotions and not knowing what to do with it. It was a cry for help. And so for me, it really is just about saying, son, you belong in our home. We love you. We're never going to let this break our connection. We are here in whatever you need. And I would tell him, I'm not trying to change your behavior. And he didn't believe a word of it because he watched me like listen to YouTube videos and read books on how to change his behavior for the first 8 years of his life. And so that's why it took a year of showing up and just saying, this time I'm doing things different. Son, I'm facing myself. Let's name that emotion. That was another thing that we talked about. What that must feel so frustrating. Naming the emotion brings it out of chaos. And so naming the emotion, telling him that I wasn't trying to change his behavior, but then really showing it with my actions. And I had to prove myself. And that's why that took a year, because I had 8 years of showing him the opposite.
And that is a really tough road. I think that, you're carving a space, Connie, into something where all of the books are saying, change the person, change that person, so all of a sudden, even hearing that, it's like, what's wrong with me? Like, what did I do wrong? So is that one of the biggest barriers, is just that acceptance piece?
I think that as human beings, we are just born to want to make things better. It's a good thing. And
Hmm.
as mothers, I think that that's just something in us. We are going to make it happen. We are women of inspiration. We are women of action. We're changing the game. And so when it comes to our kids and going through a crisis, that approach unfortunately didn't do well for me. It really had to be sitting in brokenness, being okay with brokenness, allowing it all to be welcome. And I'll tell you something, it was hard for me. It was a real surrender.
Well, I think your surrender, and I know that you've been very public with your surrendering as well. And I watched in tears with you as you shared what you're going through, and I'm even getting teary thinking about this right now, because being brave and owning these things helps other people because they can't have that voice. So you've had that voice for so many people, Connie. So that's what's so inspiring about you, is that in all of your world and going through everything that you're doing, you're helping so many people through sharing your story and actually changing lives. You're changing lives, girl. And I want to talk about, I know that there was a piece of steps, and I know that you didn't mention this here, but about that role modeling, and that really resonated with me, of course, because we have Support Her, so elevating those male champions. And for young women, there's a plethora of females. All you have to do is raise up your hand, say, I would love to, have some female role models. I mean, look at Women of Inspiration, look at all of the many women, and we're inspiring. We have categories for youth even, but what about the boys? And so when I started 2018 Support Her, it was about elevating those male role models that are champions for women. But I think you mentioned something very, very interesting in one of your talks, Connie, was about that need for that male role model relationship for young men like your son, that they have somebody that believes in them. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
So important. The live that you saw was my son came home from school one day and he just said, I don't see any point in living. Now, this is a 14-year-old boy who's been through suicide and anxiety and depression, but this was different. This was him not seeing a hope for his future. And I was crying out in that little live video that had almost 5,000 views. I'm bawling my eyes out, no makeup. Why can't this go viral? But that was real. I was crying out from my heart. Where are the men? We need the men to rise just as women are rising. And boys, they need men. I mean, I'm a great mom to my son. My husband is a great dad, but they need people outside. We need the village. These boys need direction. They need to know how to treat women. They need to know how to be okay in their own skin so that they can take on whatever role, whether it's a CEO or a stay-at-home dad, that they're so secure that they're okay with them so that they can be okay with women. It's
Mhm.
so crucial.
Yeah. And so I am with you on that one, Connie. I just, when I heard that, I said, bingo, we are on the right track. And, where we go for, into 2021, an epic year ahead, there's got to be lots of conversations that we will have about why it's so important that men step into that role model position and we shine the light on that. Because as women, we want to break those glass ceilings, but our support hers are there for not only for us and our support network, but for our families and for our kids. So I think that's really important thing. So I'm happy to hear that conversation starting.
And I was so happy to see that you're moving in that direction because that is revolutionary. What I love about what you're doing, Monica, is that you're creating an entire new culture of women. You're creating a culture of women that say the women are important, but so are our men, and celebrating men. And that is crucial. Right now, I just hear, and you may hear from your 14-year-old too, about just some of the things that go on in school with teenage girls and how they're being mentored by wounded feminists on Instagram. And it's forming a thought pattern that is very unhealthy. That's basically like, in order for me to rise up as a woman, I have to strip the man. And you're here, you are creating this movement that's saying, no, that's not the way it is. We are rising up together. Support her is about like this all inclusiveness. I think that you are an excellent role model for our young women
Mm.
rising up. And I love seeing our young women winning awards too.
Oh my God, I am so excited. I'm with you there. And, you know, we're already developing our youth program for 2021, and that will come up. And who's leading it is a 12-year-old. Our 12-year-old woman of inspiration, Sophia Fairweather, who won at age 8 in 2017. She's got, 12, she's got a couple years now under her belt. And now she's stepping into the role as a co-chair of the Youth Ambassador Program. And I'm letting her have a lot of say into how that program is built because it's coming from kids.
Amazing.
Yeah. So anyways, more to come on that. I'm super excited. I want to talk about your work. Now, Connie, we talk about the the National Hope Talks. I want to have you share with our listeners and our viewers today, what is the Hope Talks? I know a little bit about it, but I want you to share all about it.
Well, Hope Talks actually started from us going into school assemblies to talk about mental health, to really just break down the stigma. And one of the things that I really value is this multi-generational type of work. And so we thought, what if we have a conference on Bell Let's Talk Day where we bring together teachers, students, business owners, people of all ages, mental health care professionals, and allow everyone to speak. Because mental health, in my mind, is created socially. You tell your story to somebody else and they listen. It actually rewires the brain. And so the conference, of course, we have speakers, but the highlight of the day is when everyone gets to speak. And so it's a beautiful experience. And then after everyone gets to speak in a small circle, we ask what was common? What was common? Even though you're all very different, you have a CEO listening to a 12-year-old, a 12-year-old listening to a nonprofit owner or director listening to a newcomer to Canada. What was commonly said? And they write it down. And what blows my mind is that in the past years, last year we did it in Edmonton, Calgary, and Vancouver, everyone was saying the same thing. We all want to support people, but we don't know how. So
Mm.
this year, because the goal was always to take it across Canada, but it's expensive to do events in a lot of cities. And so this year, we're taking full advantage of it being online, and we're doing a Canada-wide mental health conference, bringing everybody to the table, especially through COVID, and saying, you know what, we need to band together. We need to call Canada to hope when it comes to mental health, because again, we are the culture creators. Yes, there's mental health issues, there's a crisis, but are we just going to sit and watch it happen, or are we going to do something about it? And so the National Hope Movement is about inviting everyone to the table to be a part of that solution.
Mm. Amazing. I think and we're so aligned with that, Connie. When I hear the words unity and working together and multi-generational, I think it's really topical. And it's not topical. I don't actually want to talk about the topical stuff. I want to talk about the stuff that actually will make change, that's deep and meaningful to everybody, not just the hot topic right now. But multi-generational is really key in order to make significant change. I think is that understanding of different perspectives and different challenges together. But yeah, I'm no surprise at all that people are saying the commonality is, how do I support? And one of the big things that you just had touched on is very important, just listening.
That's it. Like it's so powerful. It is really the answer because empathy and attunement, listening to someone's story, like I said, it rewires the brain. And if done enough times over and over, stories can be rewritten, trauma can be rewritten. But a lot of times we journey alone. And again, that's why what you're doing is so important. You're calling women out of isolation. You're calling women into a community, a powerful community that can support and drive us forward. This is, without it being a mental health movement, it is making an impact on someone's mental health for sure.
Yeah, and I have to agree with you. I think that you went through the journey with Women of Inspiration, and it's actually, and you went through it a couple times. You were a finalist. When before we were even national, you were a finalist, and now you're a national ambassador, which is super great. But filling out the application, it takes courage. And what do I write? Do I really want to write my whole story? Yes, you do. You really want to write your whole story, and you really want to step into the spotlight. And those are things that are hard for women, right? So I would love you to share, because I am always asked, gosh, that's a lot of work filling out the application. And, so what was that experience like, going through the nomination and then actually stepping into the spotlight and winning the award? Because that's not comfortable for most women.
It's not. When you're nominated, you're like, oh, that you're honored. You're like, I felt so honored. But and then you have like, well, really, should I really do this? And for me, the first time I went through it, it was more of the imposter syndrome. I've been doing a lot of work in the last couple of years on really grounding myself on who am I and
Mm.
being okay with me. I am brave, I'm compassionate, I'm an igniter, and I'm perseverant. And really owning that and going, I'm not for everybody, and that's okay. But so this time, coming from that place of being okay with who I am, but yet still having to put myself out there and thinking, oh, there's other people who deserve the spotlight more than me. Like, isn't that just so typical of women? Like, oh, let her have it. But there was something in me that said, no, you need to allow yourself to have the opportunity to be honored, not just for the work you've done in the last year, but for the last 20. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with accepting something that says, wow, you've been really working hard. And allowing ourselves to do that, I think, is an act of humility. A lot of people think that's not humility, but it is.
Mm.
It's allowing ourselves to be acknowledged for a moment, and then we can acknowledge others. If we can't receive acknowledgement, how are we ever going to pass it on to anyone else?
I think that's so beautifully said, Connie. And there's barriers to that. I mean, you're so right. And I have not met one woman that was not a little bit hesitant of, I don't want it to be all about me. But yes, girl, it is all about you right now, because like you said, you have worked over 20 years honing your craft, educating yourself, working hard every single day as a professional, as a mom, as a business owner, as a change maker. And that is wisdom and knowledge that is, there's no price tag on that, because it simply can't have a price on it. It's there's no price tag on the amount of knowledge that we can have from experiences and our wisdom that we have to share with everybody. So yes, owning it is so important. And I think probably what I love to know from you is, you know let's just say, now the platform that we're creating, How can you leverage? Let's talk about that word leverage. And you know what? It's one thing to own it, but now we have to leverage that. You have a national message out there that you can now leverage the ability where you have a captive audience. So, what are some of your plans to leverage that?
Well, honestly, the National Hope Movement for sure. You have some amazing plans up your sleeve, and just seeing what that could look like. Collaborations are huge. I think that doing this together, not having to create something on our own, banding together, continuing to be an alumni, continuing to see how can I give back to what you're doing. I think that that is all about the leverage. The leverage, a lot of people think I have to create my own. I have to create my own platform. I have to create my own influence. But influence is best created in tribe. It's best created in community. And yes, I have to do my own work. You're not going to do it for me. I'm not going to do yours, but we can band together and we can figure this out, and we can actually see one another thrive and rise up rather than having to do it all alone. And that is powerful and such a more joyful experience than doing it on our own.
Yeah, and I think that's really key, right? I mean, in 2014, I know that we were preaching diversity, inclusiveness, collaboration, support. And I always got met with, are you sure? Shouldn't you just focus on one type of woman? And I was always about focusing on all women from diverse industries. And now, you know, lo and behold, that's the sexy thing, just saying, right? Is that, collaboration, diversity, working together is now, if you're not doing that, you're sort of missing out. So I think there's some really good lessons here. Now I'm going to ask you, for those listeners, they're going, has there any been, what were kind of some of those points? We all have them as women, kind of that feeling of, you talked about imposter syndrome, right? I really think that that's something that we all experience at probably many times in our life when we're building and we're trying to reach for that next goal or that next milestone that we have. So how did you get past that imposter syndrome?
I think yeah, it really is a daily task. On every morning, I'm sitting on my couch. I have a blanket around me, and I'm allowing myself to get into who am I, that identity piece. Everything that we do, if we don't know who we are, all it's going to take is a little gust of wind or a slight criticism to just break us. And so I did that probably for 3 years. And I still do it to this day. It is there because every new level we face in our influence, that imposter syndrome is going to be right there. Who do you think you are? You think you've overcome it, and then the next level comes, and it's right there. So it doesn't go away. And one morning, I can't even describe what happened, but all of a sudden, I just felt like I belong. I am okay. I belong. I No one needs to create that for me. And I even got a tattoo, a little heart that reminds me that I belong. And it points outwards so that I can remember when I get criticized, when there's opposition, when there's people who aren't so thrilled about me or whatever, I can extend my hand out to them. I don't need anyone to create belonging or opportunity or influence for me.
Yeah.
And that came from 3 years of sitting on a couch every morning and getting into the grid of my own life.
Mm. So intention has a big deal to do with it. So setting the intention of who you are as a person, what values you have, and being secure in that. And I have to say, I think the universe does a really great job once you're very clear on those particular things. And I know that from experience. It's almost like it's a highway of opportunities that come your way, and you just have to be very, very you have to be open-minded to see them. But when you get clear on your intention and clear on your values and who you are, that highway is just like, it's like the Coca-Cola. It's free sailing. It really, do you feel that way as well?
Oh, 100%. And I think it's because we can be trusted at that point. We're not going to break, because when you have a call, a mission, a dream, something that you want to do to actually impact culture, that's been trusted to us. and we need to be trustworthy. And so sometimes we have to go through rejection and self-doubt to climb up that mountain, to be able to be at the top saying, I can do this now. I'm not going to walk over people. I'm not going to manipulate people. I'm not going to damage people. I'm not going to become bitter. I am now okay. I can lead a movement with integrity and authenticity, and nothing's going to break me at this point.
And I think this is another area I want to touch on, and you're a really beautiful example, Connie. When we talk about support networks and women supporting other women and men supporting women, I'm going to get to the men first, but let's talk about the women. Being champions for each other. When we're able to do that, I can call out the women that are owning their story. They know their value, they know their worth, and they're comfortable in their belonging because they're confident, and the confident ones support other women.
Yes. Oh,
Right?
absolutely. It's so hard to support someone else when you're struggling with your own worth. You're always wondering, like, why can't I be like so and so? Maybe if I tried to be more like her. You can't support people when you're in that place. But when you are confident, when you have found your own, you know that there's enough for everyone. There's enough for everyone to be succeeding, and you're not threatened, and you can really come alongside without any hidden agenda and just support. And it's beautiful.
Yeah. And I have to say, watching what happened through Women of Inspiration and a pandemic, like we went through a pandemic. We went through like chaos on steroids, getting to the point of, through the awards to the virtual, like one pivot after another. But one thing that was super beautiful and brilliant was watching and participating, and I'm actively involved all the time, as you know, but watching all of you support one another, that everybody's like, wow, that is so different. And so what was it like? And I saw the confidence. It really gravitates, like the ones that were really confident in their own powers, they were like cheering everybody on, and they're congratulating everybody, and not shy about saying, you know what, I really respect you, and I really think what you're doing is fantastic, and knowing how good it feels when somebody says that to you. And where did that come from, Connie? I mean, you're just such a good champion on that. Like, you jumped right in with both feet.
Well, I think it is because I am in this different place. I am in a place where I am okay. And just seeing women shine, seeing when people would share their hearts on those private Zoom meetings that we would have, and just getting to know each other. I connected with Monique from Caria, and I just love that woman. Like I connected with her because when she spoke, I just felt so proud of her. I'm like, I don't even know this woman, but I'm so proud of her. And other women that would speak up, and I'd hear their heart, and I think, wow, like our world is better because you're in it. It's just electric when you get women like that together.
Very cool. So I think that the important thing for listeners is don't be silent about the support and championing another woman. And I know I have actually changed the whole nomination process for when nominations open, because I want to make that accessible for every single woman to be nominated 365 days a year, right? Not just from this period to that period. Any day, anytime, you can nominate on our website, and you can champion for somebody because it feels good. And when you're owning that, oh my God, it's just like when you give a gift, you feel even better than the person receiving it. Really, you do.
It's
So
so
it's like
true.
a gift. So, so support one another. For those that are listening, confidence, it's always top, one of those top subjects that we talk about when we get together as women, is that confidence piece. And, we can all do a self-regulated chat, like, how am I feeling right now? What am I not confident about? That's sort of leading my actions. And, maybe I'm not responding in the right way. Like, obviously, I'm not confident about something. Let's go back and revisit that. So I think those are really good things to talk about and share more as we go through this process. Now, I have a very big piece of the nomination process as well. And, that we talked about a little bit is about the support her. But who are your champions in your corner? Because it is extremely important to talk about. We don't do it by ourselves. So who are those support hers in your network, Connie, that help you?
Well, my first and foremost is my husband. He's amazing. I mean, he wasn't always supportive. It's hard to be married to a go-getter woman when you're not that type of person. So throughout our marriage, he has really become that person. My boss, Abe Brown at Wellness Innovate, like he just championed the whole thing, him and his wife. My Brave Parent coaches, they were just so excited about this, and our National Hope Movement board. So I'm just so thankful that the people that I work with on the daily, that they were really taking this on as their award too for all the work we're doing together.
Amazing. And so I think that's really important to call out your support hers. And, I'm Black Fridays today, and I'm like, we open up our shop and we said, send a personal note to whomever you buy whatever you want today, and we'll do a handwritten note to say thank you. I love handwritten notes. I love things coming in the mail. And speaking about that, how was it when I knocked on your door with that little surprise for the Women of Inspiration and said, surprise? I
Oh,
had
that
the
was
mask on
so.
most of the time. The wind blew it off, but I put it back on again. How was it being surprised? How special did it make you feel?
Oh, it really was something else. I instantly thought, now this woman is a woman who I now love, because you're leading like a huge national thing, but you are delivering these things door to door. I'm like, this is my kind of love lady. Like, she is personable. She's a connector. She cares about people. That feels incredible. And it was so fun. Like, it was just such an exciting thing because I work from home and I don't see people that often. So it was great.
And you know what I love most about it is that you're like you're dying to play. And I think play is something really important as leaders, that we work really hard, but if we can have the opportunity to embrace people and have fun while we're doing it, I'm all for that, hands down. So I love that you were willing to play with me, Connie. That was really that was a highlight of my day, I have to say. That was a really fun part.
That was fun.
So, Connie, this interview, the Woman of Inspiration podcast, I hope that our listeners have got the opportunity to know who Connie is and what is important to you and why you're doing it. And so, Connie, I would just love you to share with our listeners, you know, what is something you want them to know about Connie?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that everything that I do comes from, my faith in God and a hope that the world will be better if we step up. And every listener has a solution inside of them. No matter what you think about yourself, no matter where you're at in your life, you have something inside that the world needs. Don't ever hide it. That is the heart and soul of Connie Jakab right there.
And if you can offer our listeners, there's going to be many women and some men that are listening. And when you do have that calling that comes through, what are some words of advice that you can give them, to kind of just not dismiss it? What what words of advice to sort of achieve their purpose?
I would say know who you are. Get real with yourself every day. Set that intention to find out and get grounded in who you are so that you can be okay with who you are, what you're bringing to the world. You're not trying to reach everybody. You're not for everybody, and that is okay. And there's a lot of freedom in that because there are people that are waiting for you. And somebody might not wake up tomorrow unless you wake up. You have something inside of you that will actually allow someone to live another day. That's an enormous privilege and also responsibility, but it's time to rise. And you know what? I really believe that in pandemics and crisis, heroes rise. It's not
Mhm.
ever time to hide. Pandemics and crisis, that's the time to dream. That's the time to go. That's the time to live and really pursue what you're called to do, because those are the times to shine. That's when we need you. Rise up because it's time.
And I love that because I truly echo your words, especially in the pandemic. That I always visualize that great big pot, how we used to do popcorn on the stove with the oil, and then all of a sudden pop, 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 pop. It used to happen. Like that's what I witnessed
Mhm.
with the
Yes.
leadership in the pandemic is leaders were rising out of nowhere because they were called to take action, and that was instinctively who they are and what they want to do. So look for the rise up during these times, especially. And Connie, this is the Woman of Inspiration podcast. I would love to know two things. Who is your woman of inspiration? Who inspires you?
Ooh, well, from afar, Brene Brown, love that woman, love everything she's written. Her book, Braving the Wilderness, has changed my life. And close up would be a woman mentor that I had as a youth. She would teach me how to give. We would go do things on the streets of Toronto, and she just impacted my life. She reminded me to always look on the fringes of society and see who's left out and make sure they come along.
Beautiful. And I always ask this every single time. What is your definition of a woman of inspiration?
Someone who lifts up others and brings them alongside and doesn't let any woman stand on the sidelines.
Amazing. That is a perfect way to end our amazing interview, Connie. I know that we're going to have many more conversations. We're going to dive deeper into most of those topics that we talked about. Health and wellness is one of those areas that we cannot ignore anymore, and it comes with a conversation. And I'm so proud to have you part of the Universal Women's Network, our 2020 Woman of Inspiration Health and Wellness Advocate. I see some great things happening. I see an epic 2021, which is just the beginning of some more magical, transformational work that's going to happen. I look forward to, talking with you about the National Hope Talks. I know that there's great work that we can do. And of course, we've got an epic 2020 roadshow and a book, 100 Women of Inspiration book. So, we look forward to having you participate in that, and just making, just leading by example. Being who
Absolutely.
you are, leading by example, Connie, you're a gift to the world. And I'm so excited to be on this journey and to have you as far as one of our leaders that is really just owning it. You're sharing, you're being brave, you're being authentic. And I really, I send you blessings to your family, and let's make some change together. So thank you so much for joining us on this Woman of Inspiration podcast today. And for those of you that are listening, in the show notes will be exactly how to reach Connie. But Connie, maybe you can share with our listeners, if they've got a pen handy, how they can get a hold of you.
For sure. So wellnessinnovate.com is workplace wellness, or just conniejakab.com, Jakab, and all social media handles are Connie Jakab as well.
Thank you so much, Connie. And it has been such a pleasure. And I will meet you in the green room, baby. We're gonna dance it out to some more of that Usher, your power song. And I look forward to the journey ahead. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Monica.
So everyone, thank you so much for joining. That was the Woman of Inspiration podcast. It was my absolute pleasure to be speaking with Connie Jakab. She is the owner of the Brave Parent Institute, also with the Wellness Innovate, and she is also the founder and fearless leader of the National Hope Movement. So if you're looking for some inspiring stories, I really invite you to subscribe and listen to all of the nuggets and the leaders sharing their personal journeys, sharing their leadership wisdom, and inspiring you to step up and dream big. So thanks for everyone for joining you, and have a great day.